Welcome to Scorched Earth and a look ahead at the collective energies of Leo season 2026. That covers the period of the end of July through to, about 2/3 of the way through August. So this is designed to be a companion video to your monthly readings. It's looking at the backdrop. It's looking at I guess the container within which your own monthly reading is happening for your signs. So, as we have before, we're looking for the thread, we're looking for the story. We're going to be using the Hexen 5, this absolutely mighty deck here, with the Hexen 2 to clarify. So let me flip this around and let's shuffle the cards. So we'll go 5. This deck is huge. I have quite big hands and I can't shuffle it anyway other than the way that you see here. We'll go 2, do another big one in the center, and 1. I could talk about the astrology of August, but I mean, really, there's an awful lot going on, and it would probably take take an hour on its own. So I'm going to leave better qualified people to do that. But we should point out that there will be an eclipse. Eclipse season is starting, so we're going to have a solar eclipse in Leo. Jupiter is in Leo. We're looking at the aftermath of the now separating Barbeau's basket. I think it's going to be a lot, whichever way you cut it. So let's just shuffle these one more time, just to be on the safe side. So let's have a look at the thread of Leo season, please. What are we looking at? So we've got the 6 of Pentacles. We have the 9 of Swords. And we have the 5 of Wands. So that in and of itself is a Leo card right there. It actually represents Saturn in Leo. Obviously, Saturn is in Aries at the moment, but we have the 3 of Wands at the bottom of the deck. And I think it's safe to say that, whatever has occurred in Cancer season, the noise is turning up in Leo season, because what we're looking for is an attempt to stabilize something that doesn't feel very stable. Between the 9 of Swords and the 5 of Wands, we have a great deal of instability. But the 9 of Swords makes it largely a perceptual issue rather than necessarily the reality. Now, I've been banging the drum all year about things like good digital hygiene. Don't spend hours on social media scrolling. Don't emotionally invest in a narrative that has been offered to you. Get outside, get some sun on your skin, spend time with people that you care about, because as a collective energy, 9 of Swords and 5 of Wands is not ideal. But we do have the 3 of Wands, which is, movement forwards. And I do feel like the second half of the year is going to get away from us somewhat. This is Aries energy right here. And it's very much, the emphasis is on the doing. And this need to try and balance what has become imbalanced, whether that is reality or, like I said, a perceptual issue, because the 5 of Wands is a card of conflict. It can be internal, but it can definitely be external too. I would like to pull some clarifiers before I say any more. So let's go 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I mean, the main thing to notice is that there are no major arcana cards on the table for Leo season, which I think in and of itself is really quite interesting. It's putting a lot of emphasis on individual action here, or even collective action. It's like what we do is important this month. So we have the Ace of Swords and we have the 9 of Pentacles. We have the Queen of Swords and the 6 of Wands, and we have the High Priestess and the Emperor. Now we have major arcana cards, but you will notice that they are sitting below the surface. The Knight of Wands is at the bottom of the deck here. And, I love Sagittarian energy. I really do. But sometimes it can go off a little half-cocked. Bit like Aries and a bit like Leo, like that. It is just within the remit of fire to do that. And so When we have the Knight of Wands showing up with the Three of Wands, what we can absolutely be sure of is that there is movement forwards. The quality of that movement forwards is something that we need to need to be mindful of, because like I said, a dominant energy of Nine of Swords and Five of Wands doesn't necessarily create the right container for mindful movement, I think. And because there's a very spontaneous nature to the Knight of Wands and Sagittarius energy generally, and that's great, there are also associations with a kind of recklessness and sometimes a little bit of thoughtlessness too. So let's work through these cards in order and see what we've got going on here, because I do actually like the presence of the Six of Pentacles, although that is with the caveat that sometimes if the pendulum has swung very far one way, and I'm kind of looking at these cards here, there is a tendency to swing it all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and that is also not very useful, right? The balance is literally the place in between. We have the Ace of Swords and the Nine of Pentacles, and it feels like the Ace of Swords is a revelation of certain things. I mean, the Ace of Swords is the truth, right? And it's an emergent truth. But it's truth around resources. The Nine of Pentacles is how we individually manage what resources we have at our disposal. And those are not just material resources. We're not just talking about your money or the stuff that you own. You know, land, property, cars, assets, all that sort of thing, definitely within the remit of Pentacles. But because I see the Pentacles as energetic currency, we are also talking about your time, your care, your effort, your love, your energy, your attention, huge, your attention. And the truth of something emerging here around the idea of your personal resources that needs to be brought into balance is something that feels spiky to me. Now I'm going to pull out this no, I don't want that deck. That's really interesting. I touched it and then I was like, no, I don't want this. What do I want? I'll tell you what I want. I think I want the Deviant Moon, but I have absolutely no idea where it is. Oh, it's at the bottom here. No, there it is. I have stacks of tarot cards all over my table at the moment. So let's pull out this Deviant Moon and get a little bit more information about this. So tell me about this Ace of Swords and Nine of Pentacles with the Six of Pentacles. Right, we have the Chariot on its side. That's Cancer energy, and we have Strength on its side, which is Leo energy. Now, what we've got here is people moving from a place that is not strong. It's not weak though, and that's the important thing to notice about this, because both of these cards are sideways. They're not reversed. So there's movement, but it doesn't feel like it's moving forwards, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it's balanced and aligned. The Strength card is there's some power here, but it's not really going off in the right direction, right? It's not that there's powerlessness and weakness, but there is certainly a sense that we're not batting from a position of strength. Let's have a look here. Have a look. Right, Six of Cups with the Four of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. It feels like a striving for how things were. You know, I've spoken a lot about normality and, you know, kind of harking back to 2019. Do you remember when things were normal, and have they really been normal at any point since? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Now, you know, whatever you might attribute that to, the fact is that during this period of great consciousness shift, which has been going on for some time now, definitely kicked up in 2025 and kicked up again another level in 2026, the people who are working with that energy and embracing that energy are those who recognize the enormity of this moment that we're in, where we're quite literally making history right now, but also working in a state of acceptance that whatever is going on actually needs to happen. And whether it needs to happen because there are certain things that need to be revealed, or whether it needs to happen because consciousness itself is changing, and so the human experience is changing, and what we are perceiving as unstable and chaotic and awful is, you know, the labor pains of a birth of something new. The people who really, really struggle with this are the ones who are still trying to act like everything is normal. Or, you know, back to a time where there were, there was one person or a number of people or a government or an institution that were actually to blame for the ills that we were struggling with right now, right? That sense of trying to bring things back to how they were, I don't think is going to work in Leo season. Like I said, normality doesn't really exist anymore in the way that we understand it. We are in the grip of, in the midst of intense chaos. But from that chaos, something new will emerge. We're just not at that point yet. Um, and a lot of that is contingent on the number of people who choose to turn away from what is being offered and choose to create for themselves from a place of creativity rather than fear. And the Knight of Wands would be an excellent motivating energy to do that. We just kind of put aside Sagittarius's destructive side as well. But again, all these things in balance, like in order to create, there has to be by definition a destruction somewhere. Now I feel like we're definitely in the destructive phase, but there are opportunities for construction if you so wish. But what we can't do is be trying to take things back to how they were. It doesn't exist anymore. It is a nostalgic and emotional consideration that would see us trying to go that way or resist going forwards. Truly, the only way out is through here. And even though things feel difficult during this time, again, not really batting from a place of strength and really not batting from a place of balance and alignment. Nevertheless, there is a realization here that there are certain things that are within your control and that should be within your control. I'm talking about all sorts of things here. If I have any MO at all, it is to try and help people be as sovereign as possible. That's really important to me, because when people are sovereign, when people are not all outsourcing their morality or their authority to other people, then they make considerably better judgments and much more moral judgments than when they are not. Let's just go with not, shall we? So Four of Pentacles is at the bottom of the deck here, and that is really a resistance to change. It is a not wanting to let go of something. And understandably, I mean, this does not look very comfortable at all. We are trying to push things back to how they were because then they'll be stable, Four of Pentacles, and we won't have all this chaos to deal with. Now, whether we're looking at the kind of normal that existed in 2019 or whether we're trying to push things back to the kind of normal that existed in the early part of June 2026, it is unclear. But nevertheless, there are energies at play here for whom it would be very convenient if you were to choose to be afraid and come from a place of fear rather than a place of ownership, authority, and sovereignty. I love the Nine of Pentacles because for me, even though it isn't, it's not really a proper comparison, it feels like it's the counterpoint to the devil to me. Now, we know that the Lover's card is actually the counterpoint to the devil, right? But if you think about devil energy and how it works in your life and how it's siphoning off your psychic energy in order to put you in a place of fear where you don't want to move from where you are and you don't, all the things that the devil represents. This Nine of Pentacles is an absolute light when it comes to us choosing not to succumb to that, right? The Nine of Pentacles is all about self-sufficiency and independence. It's about autonomy. I actually love the Nine of Pentacles because in the Waite Smith here, I'm like, indulge me for a second, people, and I'll show it to you. In the Waite Smith, Pamela Coleman Smith, There we go. She created this image to represent the Nine of Pentacles, and we've got this well-dressed woman in in a lovely garden, surrounded by pentacles. She's got her little bird of prey on her hand there, and we get the sense that this is a woman who has her life together, right? But the true depiction of independence on this card is nothing to do with the woman at all. It is actually this tiny little dot down here, which is a snail carrying its home on its back, carrying its own stability and security around with it, rather than trying to put itself in the middle of an environment that would provide that for it. If the snail doesn't like where it is, it can just pick up and move. And I think there's something so significant about that kind of level of autonomy and sovereignty. I love the fact that it's here on this card. Really, really do love that. It's my favourite part of the whole card. And we're seeing it up here with the Ace of Swords, which is that recognition, that epiphany that I don't have to do this. The balance that's being offered to me is actually anything but. The balance that's being offered to me is actually potentially disempowering. I'm not going that way. And I'm certainly not wanting to go backwards. What's behind here? We have the Five of Swords, which is interesting. We see it following on from the Four of Pentacles. This really is a point where it feels like any kind of resistance to the changes are not going to turn out well. Why? Because everything is very, very intense in August. As I said, we now have Jupiter in Leo. We're going to have this, which is in opposition to Pluto. We have a solar eclipse happening in Leo. There's a lunar eclipse happening in August as well, but I think it's just out of Leo season. I would have to go back and double check that. But that's happening in the sign of Pisces, closing down the story of that particular North Node narrative right there. We have the South Node in Leo, newly entered, the North Node in Aquarius, and the Pluto in Aquarius, opposing everything that is going on in Leo. I mean, that's very noisy, that axis. And I feel like as we move into Leo season, and more specifically into August, there is a feeling that it's quite confrontational. Now, whether that's personally confrontational, collectively confrontational, energetically confrontational, I think almost certainly. But there's great change going on here. And this wonky thinking that the Five of Swords is representing here, where it's effectively amounting to self-sabotage. It's coming off the back of trying to keep things the same. It really is a time for embracing the change where it comes, so that you can make quality decisions that are based on, critical thinking and an understanding of yourself and autonomy and sovereignty and all these things that we know to be incredibly important, rather than fear. Fear makes you very controllable. So, speaking of fear, when we get to the Nine of Swords, Queen of Swords and the Six of Wands underneath here, part of the noise of the Leo Aquarius axis that I think most people will experience can be summed up quite well, I think, by this Six of Wands at the bottom of the deck. This represents Jupiter in Leo. Leo is pretty big. Jupiter's even bigger. The two of them together are an expansive force. But Jupiter is as likely to expand the negative aspects of Leo as he is to expand the positives. And I guess it depends very much on, the level of maturity of the Leo sector of your chart itself as to which way that this could go. Because to see these three cards here together, I see two things, and they are effectively the other side of the spectrum from each other. One is that people give into fear, people give into really negative thoughts, people give into a kind of bleakness, maybe even black-pilledness about the state of the world and the level of power that they have to change it, and the level of power that they have to try and keep it the same as it was, go back to some sort of sense of normality here. And that there is a level of ego, arrogance, and I was going to say eccentricity, but I don't think that's quite the right word that I want. People doubling down on a position and assuming that they are right. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a very, very difficult time to reason with people. And it's just worth bearing in mind, because everybody's going to walk around with the thought that they have all the answers, that their way is right, and that everybody else should sort of do things the way that they're doing them, right? But on the other end of the spectrum, there are those people who are managing their mind and have been managing their mind well for the entirety of 2026 so far, not getting drawn into things, being scrupulous with what they are choosing to consume, what they allow their nervous system even to be exposed to, who are able to think objectively in a way that other people can't. I've been talking for probably a couple of months now about the idea that it's getting easier and easier to find your people. And not in a sense of hierarchy, right? That this person is better than these people. More in the sense of I have much more I am much more aligned. There's a shared view here about what actually is happening, and that there's a positivity in the connections. But there's very little crossover between the two groups. The people who think that what's going on here is that we have to fight the system because this is all just about government corruption, for example, or even worse, that it's attributable to one men, two men, three men, something like that. To those who recognize that humanity goes through these periods of history where everything changes and everything sorts itself out eventually, right? There is always an after. And just making sure that they don't get sucked into what effectively is some, canny drama of the moment, I might say. And they pace themselves. More than that, they're actually already building something new somewhere else. Not just to wait out what is happening in the midst of all of this chaos, but actually creating to a vision that they have about how things could be better. Now, there's very little crossover between these two types of people at this point. I think, yeah, no, I think there's very little to cross them over. So finding your people has a lot to do with whether you are going to try and keep everything exactly as it is, or whether you are already building the kind of future that you want to see for yourself. Tell me about this set of cards here. Got more sideways cards, right? A High Priestess is on her side, which is not great, because the High Priestess is like a tap, right? You tap, pipe, something like that. She's a conduit. And the idea is that things are supposed to flow through the High Priestess. This is why she comes to mean things like intuition and things like that, right? Guidance from higher places, guidance from your higher self, your spirit guides, the universe, God, source, creator, whatever your words for it are. She's an open vessel. It comes through. She doesn't interfere with that information, and she lets it out again. Sometimes she's an oracle, right? But the point is, in order for the High Priestess to do what she is here to do, she has to be open. And what I'm seeing here is big closed for a lot of people. Like the tap has been shut off, the pipe is blocked some way or another. And so it's really confirming for me what I felt like. There's not a lot of higher spiritual energy going on amongst the majority of people. Now, obviously, there will be exceptions to that. I'm sure you are one of them. I'm sure that there are many around who would also fit that bill too. But en masse, it seems like connection to higher wisdom is something that doesn't seem to be informing what people are doing, and it's certainly not informing what people are thinking. And yet, there is this kind of Jupiterian bravado about one's position that seems to be dominating. Tell me about this. Right. So, Eight of Swords, Eight of Cups. And therein is the point, right? There's the division. Temperance, another card of balance, bringing balance in, rectifying the equilibrium somewhat. Like you're in one camp or the other at this point. You're either stuck and trapped and, feeling like a victim of circumstance, or, and all the fighting that needs to come with that, or like the Eight of Cups, you are recognizing that this is not it, right? This is not it. This is not what your life is going to be about, and you, ciao, I'm away. Another card of equilibrium and balance. This feels like the universe is sifting everyone. It's like the sorting hat is going around, and there's a perspective that comes with that, which is quite interesting, that colours what you do from here on out. We can't ignore these all three cards that we associate in the hang on, I'm going to check myself here for a second. I was going to say all three cards that we represent, that we associate with representations of equilibrium and balance are on the table, but I'm actually going to correct myself there, because I feel like the devil needs to go in there as well. It is a mirror image of the Lover's card. The structure of the card is the same. The implication is that these are the same situation viewed from different perspectives. Now, the devil is missing, which is fine. Good. But the three other cards that we would associate with balance, one of them's on their side, and the other two are showing up here, in between these two eights. And so I think a lot of Leo season has this quality about it. Like, are you going to give up? Or are you going to walk away? Because the Nine of Swords can be useful in both of these instances. If we recognize that all is perception, all is mind, right? As in Hermetic philosophy, all the world is mental, right? There's a sense of kind of choosing your own reality going on here. Now, if you accept that everything's falling down exactly as it should, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should, then you're going to divest your emotional attention to all of it. Why would you be trying to keep it up? It's supposed to be falling down. It's the necessary precondition for the building of a world that reflects a different kind of consciousness that humanity has now. But it can also go the other way too. The biggest danger with the Nine of Swords is that we don't recognize its operation in our own lives. If the Nine of Swords is at play and we have lost perspective, but we can't see that we have lost perspective, we don't recognize where we are failing to think logically or critically about anything, where we allow our attention to be curated for us, in one way or another, however it happens, then that becomes very dangerous indeed. And it explains why there are people walking around absolutely convinced that they have it right. And what concerns me a little bit about what I'm seeing here is that there is a possibility for extremist behavior. Six of Pentacles, Chariot, Lovers, Temperance. Like, there's a deep desire here to try and bring things into some sort of balance. And what can we extrapolate from that? Things are wildly out of balance by Leo season. The first half of 2026 really was a lot, but I think the second half of 2026 is possibly going to have more more volatility, actually. Why? Because I think the first part of 2026 was effectively a seeding. We had the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. We had that stellium in Aries. We've had so many things going on now. It's almost difficult to keep up with them all. But it feels like people's higher thinking is hijacked by this point here. Not everyone's, but a lot of people's. But then, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should, and there is a question of free will operating in the center of this. Like, do you exercise your free will in choosing which state you're going to be in, or do you allow that choice to be made for you? Because if you're over here, in all likelihood, you've allowed that choice to be made for you. This woman here who's like, nah, not playing this one, not playing this game. She has freely chosen to go that way. I mean, in both cases, like, you're freely choosing. But it all comes down to how much control you have over your mind and how much energy and attention you put into even recognizing when the Nine of Swords is at play. Because I feel like that's half the battle there. To be able to go, am I really seeing this correctly? It's worth bearing in mind that Neptune is still really active and everything as it newly goes into Leo. I think the solar eclipse will miss making an aspect to Neptune. I think it will. Might it catch Saturn? I think it might catch Saturn. No. Sorry. I'm thinking aloud here. Whatever happens in the Leo part of everybody's chart, but also, out there in the world in Leo season, is going to be trining, at least by house, Saturn and Neptune over there in Aries. But I think by degree, everything that newly enters Leo will be trining Neptune. And here's the thing: I've been talking about this almost non-stop. Neptune is a distortive energy. Like, we cannot perceive what the Lord of the Invisible Empire is showing us. It's a bit like, when they started discovering new I don't even know what it was that they were discovering now. New planets. And they were finding them by not seeing them themselves, but seeing how when they moved in front of a star, it distorted the light. It's almost like you can only really perceive Neptune sideways. You can only perceive it from the periphery. You can't find it when you look for it head on. It's the Lord of the Invisible Empire. And everything that Neptune touches kind of warps and distorts because it's a level of spirituality we can't really perceive head on. Now, if we recognize that that energy is so very active right now, it removes the need to be reactive to the things that are going on, right? It puts us in connection to that higher state of being that says, I choose not this. I'm going to go and do something else. Like, I'm not going to allow myself to be swept up by the drama and the chaos of the moment, and I'm not going to be part of what is perpetuating that chaos and drama of the moment. And there will be plenty of it, I'm sure, over the course of Leo season, because it's all just so noisy. Every time I think about Leo season, I almost want to put my hands over my ears because the noise is just so fucking much. So the quality of the choices that you make this month are really, really important. And if there is any point at which you feel like you are stuck by circumstance and situations, I would really go back and check your base assumptions about things. I could check what your perspective is, what your perception of the moment is. Because at any point you can choose to walk away from this. You can choose to divest your emotions from this and go do something else. And it seems like that's the much more powerful position to take. But at the same time, you'll notice that both of these cards are numbered 8. We reclaim our power in the Eight of Swords by checking our assumptions, right? By checking what we've missed, by checking even our priorities and things like that. Because when we do that, we tend to find that we're nowhere near as trapped as we think we are. In the case of the Eight of Cups, power is always gained by walking away from what we have outgrown, what we are no longer a part of. This woman here is like, fuck this. I'm off to find my 9th cup. This is not, oh my God, the world's going to shit and this is all terrible. It's like, I'm kind of done with this level of whatever this is. I'm going to go and pursue something really meaningful. Because the 9th cup represents that energy of your highest hopes, goals, dreams, and aspirations. And it's like, if everything's falling down, what have you got to lose? But to go and start creating on that kind of level. To see what I mean? So by the time we come to the 5 of Wands over here, Saturn and Leo as is, we have a state of conflict going on. Now, this could be, internal conflict. It could be conflict between peoples. It could be war. One of the things that we don't really see, or we don't really have an indication of properly in the 5 of Wands, is whether we've got a bit of play fighting going on, or, a sparring exhibition going on, or whether there is actually war happening here, right? And these things are important. If it's a controlled sparring session, if it's an exhibition fight, then there is power and there is control, and that is what is being demonstrated. That is what is being trained for. If it's a play fight, then, it might get out of hand, but there's good intentions behind it, right? It's just a bit of horseplay. But on the other side of the spectrum, there can be a desire to actually create harm on another or inflict harm on another. And the problem is that the 5 of Wands represents all of that. Now, I think it's interesting that we've got a 6 of Wands leading to a 5 of Wands over here. Quite literally stepping backwards. It feels like there's a regression here where we thought we were winning, we thought we got everything sorted, we thought it was all good. Suddenly it's descended into chaos again. And you think about, the majority of the beginning of 2026, how many times was there something that was a problem and then it looked like it was resolved? I actually just in a weekly energies reading pointed out to my community that for y'all in the States, it's interesting how many agitational things seem to happen on a weekend only for there to be a promise of a solution on Monday morning ready for the markets. Curious. But it's back here. It's back in conflict, strife, fighting. On what kind of level, I'm not sure. But intrinsically chaotic, because that's what the 5s in the minor arcana talk about. They talk about the chaos of things breaking down, the chaos of things not being able to support what is being built on top of them, or even what has been built on top of them. It is a collapse of the foundation in one way or another. Now, there is another way of looking at this 5 of Wands. I don't think it's the right one for this particular reading, but I'm going to throw it in anyway. And sometimes the 5 of Wands can simply denote competition, right? Healthy competition, like it's like, well, yeah, like the sparring or the exhibition fight. even the play fighting, right? It's a bit of healthy physical competition. I don't really feel like that's what's going on here. But you'll notice that the 2 major arcana cards that we've got sitting underneath it are the High Priestess in the upright, importantly, and the Emperor. Now, the Emperor is supportive fire energy here. And the reason why it's very, very supportive is because where we have that chaos and disorder in the Five of Wands, the Emperor is the representation of order, maintenance of order, creation of order, all those kind of orderly things. Because it is the masculine fire energy. It wants to create order out of things. The feminine principle is much more of the chaos, actually. So we've got feminine energy here with the High Priestess. We've got masculine energy here with the Emperor. And what's quite interesting about the combination of these two here is that there are two couples in the major arcana. We have the Emperor and the Empress, and we have the Magician and the High Priestess. And I think the Magician and the High Priestess are the real power couple, actually, of the major arcana. But there is a train of thought that says that the High Priestess and the Magician are the heavenly parents of the Fool, whereas the Emperor and the Empress are the earthly parents of the Fool. So we've got this kind of this movement of Fool type energy coming first through the Magician and the High Priestess, and then finding its material expression in the Empress and the Emperor, right? They are literally the earthly parents. Empress births the Fool. Here we have this new energy going on, right? And I really like that. I really like the idea of that, of this Fool energy passing through here. But the problem is that we've got one of each from the one of each couple. We don't have them appearing in the right order, right? So we've got the heavenly mother of the Fool and the earthly father of the Fool. It's like the Fool energy is implied, but it's not present. But here, it's kind of like it's trying to come through, but it can't. Now, if we had here the Magician and the Empress, then I would say this is all sort of coming to some sort of conclusion fairly soon, but we don't. It's even in the attempt to create order, it is disordered because we haven't got the Fool coming through in the right order. Does this make sense? I like the fact that the High Priestess is in the upright now, but it feels like persistent chaos. Tell me about these three cards here, for which the only solution really do we have here? Right, we've got the Seven of Swords, we've got the Seven of Pentacles on its side, and we've got the Two of Pentacles here, and the Six of Wands, right? It feels like the only solution to this really is to keep leaning into that inner knowledge, that the inner knowing that the High Priestess represents so strongly, deeply intuitive, recognizing the messages that are coming down from wherever they're coming down, and then creating a personal kind of order, a personal kind of sovereignty that is not dependent on everybody else doing the same thing. Like, there is an exhortation here to avoid being part of crowds in terms of your not physically, well, maybe physically actually, but certainly in terms of the energies of the moment, right? They don't just immediately align with lots of other people because everybody else has that same opinion, right? You look into crowd psychology, I've said it before, people en masse are monumentally stupid. This is not a time to be en masse sharing an opinion with lots of people. It's a time for checking in with yourself and make sure that you're objectively assessing situations as they actually are and leaning into your higher awareness of things. If you don't meditate, maybe you should fucking start. But whatever by whatever medium it is that you receive messages from your higher self, your guides, God, source, spirit, creator, universe, like whatever the vernacular is that you're going to use, it is insufficient to just be aware. It feels like there has to be something that is put into practice. There's a big push here from spirit, God, source, universe, creator, all that sort of stuff, right? There's a big push here to not be part of this, but to be guided by this. We've got the Seven of Swords, which is indicating that this is not going to be a comfortable place to be. And I do wonder if there is some aspect of this that has people feeling like there is kind of safety in numbers, particularly in terms of the opinion that they're holding on what is going on right now. I remember I have recalled certain events in history that have occurred while I've been alive, um, where people with hot takes on stuff have actually, found themselves in difficult situations, right, where they go against the prevailing dominant view. People take that very, very personally. There's a sense here of the High Priestess and the Emperor saying, take yourself away from whatever this is, because the Fool isn't coming yet. He can't come yet. The established channels through which the Fool arrives and is born are not available here, but there is something that you can do in the interim, in the midst of all of this chaos. That is probably slightly uncomfortable. Like I said, it probably is slightly uncomfortable. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. Because this Seven of Swords here, when I teach the tarot over in my private community, which I do sometimes, I do ask people to look at the distribution of the representations of the element. So in the case of the swords, like, you look at the distribution of the swords, because they have a meaning in their clumpings together. Sometimes, like the swords, you just see this kind of uniform line of whatever it is. Six of Wands has always got the Five of Wands showing up like this, or one person holds the sixth, right? Look at the distribution of this. Now, I think the Seven of Swords is really interesting because you'll see these other five swords are kind of dotted around here. So already we have the Five of Swords, and we know that that is wonky thinking. We know that that's not cool, right? It's often tantamount to self-sabotage, actually. But then we have two swords. And what do we think about two swords together? Well, the Two of Swords represents that which we do not know, that which we do not see, that which we cannot see, sometimes that which we won't see. Now, usually the woman in the Two of Swords is crossing over her chest. She's holding two identical swords, and there is a stasis in that card. It's like, no, I'm maintaining this state of balance here because I don't want to look. Because if I look, my mind will be changed. Here, we've got something entirely different going on. We've got a literal sword of Damocles hanging over this guy's mouth right here. It is only the endurance of his own legs in this moment that is stopping that sword of Damocles just dropping straight down into his throat. It's not a proper sword of Damocles because that was suspended by human hair, right? And the guy wasn't holding it up with his legs, but I think you take my point. The second his legs drop here, the second he stops being strong, he stops enduring. What is he enduring? The ambiguity of when the fuck this situation is going to stop. The second he stops that, he impales himself on his own sword. This is not a comfortable situation, but it's one that we've just kind of got to brace for a little bit until, hopefully, maybe some assistance comes along, or we work out how to fix this for ourselves. And that's probably the most important part here, right? So we've got, I think, the idea of a very, very uncomfortable comfort zone that we are trying to get out of, but we've got to do it in the right way. We do not want to not fall on our own sword, right, but have our own sword fall down our very throats. But we've got the Seven of Pentacles here, and this is really important because I really like the Seven of Pentacles. I like what it represents. I like it in the upright and I like it in the reverse. I don't like it on its side like this because the ambiguity of this moment here, which is offering neither a clear understanding of the problem nor a corresponding solution to said problem. It's not possible when this card is showing up on its side. We have enhanced ambiguity. We have a wait and see. You've got to hold on and keep strong and keep going, even though everybody else seems to have made up their mind about things. You got to hold strong spiritually but also hold strong in terms of your sovereignty over the course of Leo season, and find a way to juggle these pentacles, which is probably not going to be very comfortable either. Chopping wood and carrying water. I mean, the Two of Pentacles for me is a card that talks about whether you're coping or surviving or thriving, right? Those are different things. They are very, very different things. Even between coping and surviving, right? These are very, very different things. But it's talking to slow movement. It's talking to take every day one at a time. It's saying the path to success here cannot be shortcut. And it's probably going to be very uncomfortable. It would be much easier for you to align with what everybody else thinks and to go along with the crowd than it is to maintain your own position. And I don't think this is something you need to shout about. I'm very clear about that. But I would be moving according to the beat of your own drum, your intuitive guidance and how you're putting it into practice. August feels like a very fucking serious month to me. Or Leo season, not August. Most of August. But we've got a good 10 days of July too. The whole of Leo season feels very, very serious indeed. Remember what I said about Pluto being in Aquarius over the other side. We've got the South Node going through, newly going through Leo during this season too. And ingresses always do feel a little like in your face in terms of the vibe shift, right? We have to make sure that the exercise of sovereignty and authority is not coming from a place of ego. It's not coming from a place of self-aggrandizement. It's just coming from a place of, I'm not playing this game. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and do this over there. This is going to be a difficult position to hold. I really do think that. But the Six of Wands is at the bottom of the deck saying it will be worth putting yourself through that for what comes out the other side. What's underneath there? King of Pentacles. Taurus energy. Interesting. Is that what I think it is? Yes, it is. It actually feels like there's a kind of clarity that is available to you if you choose this path over the other towards the end of Leo season that wasn't visible before. Now, whether or not anybody pays attention to that, if they fall into this other camp over here, is a matter for them. But the path to success here perhaps is keeping your own counsel, not moving with the crowd, and checking your own ego. Big time checking your own ego. Because you better guarantee that Pluto is going to be doing that from the other side of the zodiacal wheel. Fascinating. Right. I'm going to leave it here. Like I said, this is a companion to your monthly reading. So the idea is you watch this one first and then you see where your energy slots into what is going on here. So what a time to be alive, my friends. What a time to be alive. If you're in any doubt at all, I would go back and watch the How to Thrive in 2026 video, because I feel like the stuff that we were talking about embodiment there is probably even more relevant for the second part of 2026 than for the first. So, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.